Love podcasts, hate nonsense.
Woo!
That was a nice little shout from the gallery.
Lovely
hi.
countdown from Ben. Hello.
I'm with Laura Beveridge. We are going to be going into Prime Minister's questions, where Keir Starmer is taking it today. He's back. He's not on a foreign trip.
He's not. And what a day for Keir Starmer to be taking Prime Minister's questions.
Wes Streeting will not be there. Wes Streeting is with NHS providers up in Manchester.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is NHS
There's
providers.
NHS conference, which I didn't know was a thing.
No, neither did I. Also, okay, just a bit of shop talk. They sent the accreditation for that, the NHS providers, yesterday. And I was like, oh, we should go to this. And it was for yesterday and today.
Yeah.
Just really poor planning there from the press officers there.
Definitely.
I think we would have gone.
I feel like if you haven't seen this, this is basically coming from the fact that there was a website launched called Wes for Leader. I don't think it's been confirmed who launched the website, but it has sparked wild rumours and speculation and briefings and unattributed quotes about the potential of a leadership challenge to Keir Starmer.
Yes, there was some pretty heavy briefing that is sourced pretty close to the Prime Minister around Streeting and this potential leadership takeover, and that's all that Westminster is talking about this morning. I think this has been sort of, I suppose, because Wes Streeting has been spoken about for a long time as the almost heir to the throne. He is seen as very close to Morgan McSweeney. He's got very close allies and friends across the party. You know, he's probably one of the only cabinet ministers who's still very close friends with Angela Rayner, who a number of Westminster watchers see her as a potential challenger or someone that you would need to have on side because she's still presiding over the left of the party in a way that a number of people at the top are not. However, this leadership challenge is very odd considering you would need, it's not quite like the Tory procedure where you can in secret lodge your letters to the party chairman and you can quietly plot away in the background. No. 80 of you have to go on public record that you would like to lodge a leadership challenge. And I don't really imagine that a number of MPs would want to do that right now.
I think they were saying that there's about 50. That was like the number that I was seeing being batted about.
But publicly...
I know. And also, is Wes Streeting that much more popular than Keir Starmer? Like, is this just switching one out for the other and it makes no difference, but you've in the meantime wasted loads of time where you could have been governing?
Yeah, it's the old... that phrase that was being bandied about throughout the sort of the successive Tory administrations, the moving the deck chairs on the Titanic, right?
Reshuffling the deck chairs.
Yeah, I really hate that phrase. That's
I catch myself using it sometimes and I'm like, oh no, stop.
You actually brought out, no, it wasn't you, it was Sean brought out Statesman the other day, and that is honestly, that alongside Damp Squib are my two
what's the cat one?
The cat?
The dead cat thing.
Dead cat.
Dead cat.
And Sticky Wicket, is it? Or something like that. I hate that. But yeah, this is pretty much all that Westminster is talking about today, which is sort of disappointing because we are looking ahead to the budget. We're really at a sort of a crunch time, a crucial moment where perhaps there could still be some public pressure or some opportunity to quote unquote focus group with the public some of the measures that will be delivered in the budget. It's 2 weeks time, isn't it? It'll be 2 weeks today. The scrutiny could be levied on that, but instead we are now looking at sort of internal factional politics, which is funny actually because Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer aren't factions.
I was like, Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer I feel like appeal to the same ilk of the Labour Party, so genuinely you'd just be replacing Keir Starmer with like a slightly younger Keir Starmer, and what's the point in that?
Yes, although he would be the first openly gay Prime Minister, would he?
I think so.
Yeah,
he would be
publicly. Yeah. Which would actually be very good for the Labour Party because
they haven't had a female Prime Minister.
They've never had a female Prime Minister, so at least you can offer
some diversity.
Some diversity. But not that would change much of the politics of the day.
No.
He's very much a Morgan McSweeney what would he? How would you describe it? Coagulation? Like, he's like the personification of Morgan McSweeney's politics.
I would say, does Morgan McSweeney win either way? Because the Starmer project was his project, and now if they were just to replace Starmer with Streeting, it's like, well, Morgan McSweeney stays and doesn't change his position at all.
There was talk last night of him running through Whitehall.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
it just sounds so, sorry to do like an Iannucci, but it sounds so thick of it, doesn't it? The idea that he's just legging it down Whitehall. The Prime Minister there has just taken his first question, so the leader of the opposition will be standing shortly. I can see Kemi Badenoch. She is there. Should we cross over, guys? Let's go on in.
Which is campaigning to return the £2.3 billion investment reserve back to its members, 700 of which are in Doncaster Central. The Labour government delivered on its manifesto pledge for the MPS scheme last year, so will the Prime Minister also ensure that fairness and justice is delivered to the BCSS members at the upcoming budget, and will he meet with me and other Coalfield MPs to discuss further?
Well, I know how committed she is to righting historic wrongs for our mining communities, and I can assure her so am I. She will know we've already transferred £1.5 billion that was wrongly kept from over 100,000 former mine workers. Ministers, as she knows, have met the BCSS trustees on several occasions. The Industry Minister is meeting them later on today, and I'll make sure that she's updated in relation to that.
Kemi Badenoch, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate my party with the Prime Minister's comments about Remembrance Week, and also his comments on Manfred Goldberg and Mervyn Kirsch, who is in the gallery today? Mr. Speaker, this morning on the BBC, the Health Secretary said there is a toxic culture in Downing Street that needs to change. He's right, isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, my focus each and every day is on rebuilding and renewing our country. But let me be absolutely clear, any attack on any member of my cabinet is completely unacceptable. On the Health Secretary, Mr. Speaker, in relation to Health Secretary, he promised before the election that in the first year of a Labour government we'd deliver 2 million extra appointments. We didn't deliver 2 million, or 3 or 4. We delivered 5 million extra appointments. And today the Health Secretary is in Manchester, where he's announcing that because of the action he's taken to abolish NHS England, he's putting more people on the front line. He's doing a great job, as is the whole of my cabinet.
Mr. Speaker, what we heard the Health Secretary say this morning was that he wants to cut waiting lists, but we all know that there's only one waiting list that he really wants to cut. But the Prime Minister is not going to do anything about the toxic culture. This is his responsibility. Just last night, his allies accused not just the Health Secretary, but the Home Secretary and even the Energy Secretary of launching leadership bids. These attacks came from Number 10, nowhere else, his toxic Number 10. The person responsible for the culture in Number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr. Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on Cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their jobs. And Mr. Speaker, she asks about waiting lists. Waiting lists are down under this government. The number of GPs is up. And because we've scrapped NHS England, we're investing on the front line. That's what the Health Secretary is doing today, getting on with his job, and he's doing a very good job too.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear him give full confidence to Morgan McSweeney, but the truth is he says these attacks aren't authorised. That means he's lost control of Number 10, because that's where they're coming from. But the real scandal, Mr. Speaker, the real scandal is that 2 weeks from a budget, the government has descended into civil war. Instead of fixing the mess they've made of the economy, they're all... Mr. Speaker, they're all chuntering. These are the feral MPs that Number 10 has been talking about. They're not my words. They're Number 10's words, his words. But unbelievably, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's advisers have been reduced to briefing that MPs can't get rid of him, and I'm not making this up, they can't get rid of him because it would destabilise international markets. Why does the Prime Minister think that there would be a market meltdown if the Health Secretary took over?
Mr. Speaker, this is a united team and we are delivering together. Look what we're doing. The fastest growth of the G7. 5 interest rate cuts. Trade deals with the EU, the US and India, all of which they oppose. We've delivered. And I can update the House.
If people want to audition for a pantomime, I suggest you go to the Old Vic.
Pantomime. Mr. Speaker, I can update the House. The Bank of England has upgraded growth today. We've secured £230 billion of private investment. And just this morning, I thought she might welcome it, the SSE have announced £33 billion of investment in clean power. That's what this team are delivering for the country, fixing the mess that they left.
Mr. Speaker, he's talking about growth and investment. While the Prime Minister desperately tries to cling on to his own job, perhaps he understands what it's like for all those people out there losing their jobs. How can he talk about growth? Yesterday, we learned that unemployment has risen to the same rate as it was in lockdown. 180,000 jobs lost, Mr. Speaker. Why does the Prime Minister think that unemployment has risen every single month since Labour took office?
Mr. Speaker, let me give the House the details. 329,000 people more are in work since the start of this year. So 329,000 more are in work. Of course, I accept we need to do more in relation to unemployment. That's why we're transforming job centres, which they opposed. That's why we're working with 60 major businesses to tackle ill health in the workplace and invested £3.8 billion in tailored back-to-work support, which they opposed. I would also remind the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, that the average unemployment in the 14 years of her government was 5.4% higher than the rate today.
Mr. Speaker, we left employment higher than it was after the last Labour government. Let me tell him now, what is causing it is his disastrous budget last year. That is what has caused the increase in unemployment. And so, to be clear, for all those Labour MPs shaking their heads, it's last year's tax rises that have killed jobs, and that's what's going to trigger this year's tax rises. This is the tax doom loop, and there is only one way out of it, and that is to cut spending. So why is the Prime Minister instead offering welfare giveaways to save his own skin?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell the Leader of the Opposition why we increased national insurance. It's because of the mess that they left the country in. The NHS on its knees. Now we've got 5 million extra appointments, waiting lists down, and 2,500 more GPs as a result of our decisions. But it's nearly the one-year anniversary, but she still hasn't told us in relation to national insurance whether she agrees and admits that we should do it, or if if that's her position, how she would find the money that we raised in the budget. She's had a whole year to think about that question. Perhaps now she can give us an answer.
Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't have made the stupid mistake in the first place of putting up the jobs tax and killing jobs. Since they came in, it's been disaster after disaster. The Deputy Prime Minister, the new Deputy Prime Minister, is clueless about how many illegal migrant sex offenders he's let loose. The Culture Secretary, breaking the rules to give her donor a top job. Taxes set to rise even further. Unemployment at levels not seen since lockdown. And in the middle of it, a weak Prime Minister at war with his own cabinet. Mr. Speaker, it's not just him, it is all of them. There is no replacement, it is all of them. 2 weeks before the budget, isn't it the case that this Prime Minister has lost control of his government, he's lost the confidence of his party, and lost the trust of the British people?
Mr. Speaker, the stupid mistakes were made over 14 long years. They broke the economy, and now they think that they can lecture us. And now they've got this unserious idea that they can find £47 billion of cuts without saying where they're going to come from. No wonder that's called flimsy. Meanwhile, we're rebuilding the country. Wages up, investment up, mortgages down.
Order. Mr. Phil. You were meant to be a senior person on this front bench. You're meant to set an example. It's certainly a bad one today. Sir Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, despite extra government funding, adult social care services in my community are in disarray. My constituents are also facing a new fire risk because we don't have a fully functioning fire authority. This has all been caused by the dysfunction at Kent County Council because so many reform councillors have been suspended for bad behaviour. So does the Prime Minister share my concern that reform chaos is a risk to public safety?
My sympathy is with the people of Kent whose lives are being disrupted by the staggering incompetence of reform. Mr. Speaker, Kent County Council was supposed to be the blueprint for what reform would deliver across the country. Now we can see what that means. Cutting local services, raising council tax, failing to protect the...
We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
Statesman-like?
Not quite, I don't think.
So, okay, Kemi Badenoch there. The first question, well, the first couple of questions, I think all four, actually, before the final two, which actually then deviated to the budget, were around Keir Starmer's position and his leadership. Laura, do you think that was the right course of action this morning?
I mean, I think that for Conservatives watching and certain parts of the media, I think they'll say it was a good performance from Kemi there, even though I'm not necessarily sure. I'd agree. But she went after the toxic culture in Westminster and said that the Labour Party had descended into civil war as well. And yeah, then she pivoted to unemployment as well, which
Little pithy joke there, wasn't there, about Keir Starmer will sympathise with the 180,000 people who've lost their job because he's clinging on to his job.
Yeah.
Very pithy. Pithy. There was a real open goal there this morning, wasn't there? And, you know, I think that two of the questions as well were used up by asking whether the Prime Minister had confidence in his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Starmer replied to that with, you know, I appointed the Cabinet, I appointed my staff, therefore there's the best people in positions and I'll have no attacks on my staff. She came back with a second round of that question. I didn't hear him confirm confidence in his Chief of Staff.
I'm not sure. That line of questioning to me is so bizarre because we've previously heard Keir Starmer say he has full confidence in ministers that then a few days later are no longer ministers. So it kind of feels a bit of a pointless question, and just so they can turn around and go, oh well, we've got you when he eventually does sack them.
It does feel a little bit, I think it does feel a little bit cheap. It does feel like a little bit of a waste of Leader of the Opposition questions, because I would argue that is the sort of thing that you would put as a political journalist to say the Downing Street spokesperson. I mean, after Prime Minister's questions, there is a huddle with lobby journalists, right, and with the Chief of Staff, with the Prime Minister's spokesperson that takes place immediately afterwards. And those are the sort of questions that a lobby journalist should be asking the Prime Minister. I think unless you are really on the brink of losing the Prime Minister, I don't think that that's a good use of Leader of the Opposition questions. You know, I also would just say, you've got a real open goal with the economy. You've got a real moment to talk about the budget. You know, we've had lines briefed about the 2-child benefit cap potentially being lifted. We've also heard that there could be an alcohol tax rise in the budget. You know, that's going to dramatically affect hospitality and potentially lead to more job losses, which is in line with the unemployment figures that were sky high yesterday, came out around 7 o'clock yesterday morning. That should really be the focus, I think, of a serious politician, rather than the sort of inner machinations of party workings.
Absolutely. And to only get 2 questions on those unemployment statistics, I think when they are probably the most pressing thing for voters to be facing. Like, I'm not sure voters care or are even aware of the psychodrama between Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer. Like, I think what they want to know is when will a job become available to me?
I think there's also sort of, obviously you want to do the political point scoring, but there's also sort of a moral argument around, now this is going to sound ridiculous, so you've got to just sort of bear with me for 1 minute here. But when you have instability in government, those markets very easily spooked, do react, right? So, and we are in a volatile time for the economy, and we are in a volatile time for fluctuating markets. I would just say, if you were a person or a politician who wanted to be taken seriously as Leader of the Opposition, someone who seems government ready, is the best use of your time while you're in opposition working against the markets or working to create more volatility instead of actually proposing perhaps sensible ideas that could position you as someone who is ready for leadership.
There's Nigel Farage asking a question there.
Should we go dip back into that? Go on then, Ben.
The council, brilliantly led council, will be issuing foreclosure notices on 3 migrant hotels within the next few days in response to grave public concern about the safety of women and girls on the streets of West Northamptonshire. Would the Prime Minister approve of us speeding up the closure of the migrant hotels?
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, we will correct the mess we inherited and close every hotel. At their peak, under the previous government, there were 400 hotels. Now there are only 200 remaining. But he says he doesn't have time to condemn the comments calling children in care evil. He's also not had the time, it appears, to condemn the racist comments of his own MP. Utterly spineless.
Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited the new diagnostic centre at Withington Community Hospital, and as well as the 85,000 new appointments it's going to create, I was really pleased.
There you go, Laura. That was the leader of the opposition, Nigel Farage, asking about migrant hotels and the potential closure. This is interesting, actually, because there are... the Labour are desperate to close hotels up and down the country, asylum seeker hotels. This is where people are placed while they are waiting to see if their asylum application will be approved. A number of councils are actually consulting at this moment in time about where these people will have to go, because essentially the big headline is close the hotels. Labour want to have a sort of a win in the headlines of we have shut X amount of hotels while the Conservatives opened them. Now, a number of councils are consulting on these people being moved into HMO properties or into army barracks or into other disused government property as a way of cost saving. I was actually speaking to someone at a council in the south yesterday, and he had just left a meeting with the Home Office, and he was raising like really grave concerns around essentially the protection of these people. So whether these people would now be put into sort of squalid quarters, or whether they would be more vulnerable to the trafficking. I was going to call it the trafficking community. Trafficking community. Criminals who work in trafficking, and essentially saying that a number of people could now be scooped up by this, sort of illegal car washes, illegal nail shops, illegal sex work, because they will be more volatile and more exposed.
Absolutely. I think that is because we already know that there are lots of asylum seekers that have already been placed into HMOs, and like you said, that comes with a lot of its own problems, because if you are in an asylum hotel or even military barracks, there is an element of security that you have, and I guess also that the community has, because they often have like G4S or security working there, and also then the asylum seekers have access to communal facilities too, but in HMOs those services won't be available. And I was actually looking at Wigan has had a massive community issue, or the community is very unhappy, residents are very unhappy with the use of HMOs to house asylum seekers, because essentially they're concerned by the fact that houses on their streets are being bought up by these corporate landlords like Serco, who are paying the landlords to house asylum seekers in these HMOs. And I was also speaking to a councillor from Liverpool who was saying that Serco being able to take over all these properties is hiking the rents for local Liverpudlians as well and outpricing them.
These lucrative private contracts have sort of been the... I think when we're reflecting on this period of time of the Labour government, I think that we'll see these sort of lucrative private contracts as the hallmark of actually Starmer's premiership. There has been a real transfer between, not that it hasn't been going on for the past 40 years, but there has been a real visible transfer of public into private ownership, these huge companies like Serco and G4S really stand to benefit when you are moving people into HMOs. There's also, the security around putting asylum seekers into a random house on a random street. Very identifiable, because you will have security sitting outside that house.
Is that how it's going to work? Will there be security at each HMO? Because that's what I couldn't figure out, is will there have the same level of security as hotels have? Or
likely.
Yeah.
Because you are putting these people into communities where there may be hostility. The moment that some perhaps groups within the far right find out these locations, what's stopping them from descending onto those properties and wreaking havoc? You're putting people into really volatile positions. The hotels, though, are a total shambles. And, I really do think the public discourse should be on those hotel managers and the amount that they have subsumed from local government. Some of these places, like particularly the Bell Hotel in Epping, that was arguably a rundown hotel, wasn't 100% occupancy. The owners of that hotel have petitioned the council to keep that open a number of times during the fight for its closure, because it's financial for them, because they can charge top rate for rooms that would not be occupied without government intervention. It really is actually shocking.
And I think the report that the Home Office Select Committee did into these contracts basically said that the government and the previous governments had been handing out these contracts which have insane profit margins. Like, these companies have made hundreds of millions out of asylum contracts, and then said that there's been a complete lack of oversight to make sure that there's been any deliverance on those contracts. So often there's been incredibly poor service, because it's in a business's interest to cut all costs to maximise the profit. So the taxpayer isn't benefiting, the asylum seekers aren't benefiting. The only people benefiting is these companies' bottom lines. And
this is sort of, so the government finds itself, or the Home Office specifically finds itself, in a doom loop, right? Because in order to, if you were to speed up applications, which is what they did when they first entered government, there are, I think it was over 80% of asylum claims were accepted, and people received their asylum seeker status. That made for a poor headline, because you obviously get the sort of the more right-wing news media writing about the number of people that we have taken in, and they say that this has increased immigration. Actually, in the grand scheme of net migration, it is minuscule. However, if you don't approve these asylum seeker applications almost in the immediate, then people are placed in hotels, and they are languishing in these hotels at enormous taxpayer expense, enormous. And not on the actual cash that they're receiving. Most of these people are probably receiving around £9.95 a week to live on. But the cost of housing them in that hotel is extortionate. So they're in this doom loop of, do we approve the asylum applications in the immediate and then receive some terrible headlines, or do we leave people languishing in hotels and also receive, some appalling headlines? It's the
whole thing feels like such a mess, because even with if we speed up these application approvals, there's a massive issue with homelessness once people do have their asylum claims approved, because the myth is that, you get your asylum claim approved and then suddenly you're at the top of the council housing register. But that's just not true. And often these people don't have access to any funds because they have fled their home countries and often fled war or terrible circumstances. And then, they end up homeless in these communities because they have nothing, and there is very little help available, and they're at the bottom of council house registers.
And this is when the Danish model that they were talking about implementing, or Shabana Mahmood is now very interested in taking elements from, becomes interesting, because the sort of, for some reason, there's no sort of big think on Whitehall to move people who have arrived in this country, had those applications approved, into the workplace. There is no national insurance number that is given to people in the immediate. There is no drive to get these people working or trained into jobs that actually we probably do need filled in this country. Instead, there is sort of like rather mouse-like approach to, well, I'm sure they'll just sort of figure it out by themselves, and then they end up in cash jobs which are likely illegal and likely exploiting them. And then who ends up winning? some criminal.
And that was what the big issue was in the Caerphilly by-election, was that the Welsh Labour government, backed by Plaid Cymru, had established this plan, which was to help people who had their asylum claims granted, who in Wales are majority Ukrainian refugees, to get them into housing and work. And it was a plan to basically make sure that they didn't fall into the trap of kind of being left behind and being left without any resources. But that was deeply controversial.
Gosh. Laura, I think we can wrap it up there.
Yeah.
We'll have the full Prime Minister's questions available on YouTube, so if you want to go back and watch any of those, and then Sean will be busy putting together some highlights, although it's getting more difficult to find some highlights. All right then, we'll wrap it there.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.